The plot of Sleep begins with an eerie and unsettling introduction of the main character, Alice, an investigative journalist deeply affected by chronic insomnia. From the start, it's clear that her condition is not just physical, but also psychological. Alice has a painful history of trauma. She lost her parents in a car accident when she was young, and this tragic event remains embedded in her subconscious. The loss and guilt she feels for not being present when her parents died turn into open wounds that never healed properly. This latent pain, in many ways, is the driving force behind her inability to sleep. The film's initial setting is somber and tense. Alice lives in a small, cluttered apartment in a large city, where the constant noise of cars and sirens echoes through the night. The atmosphere captures the sense of isolation that many chronic insomniacs experience, a life of solitude amidst the hustle and bustle of the outside world. The nighttime scenes are filmed in cold, oppressive color palettes, reflecting Alice's emotional state. The camera often focuses on her pale, tired face, and her wide, alert eyes show the constant struggle to maintain sanity as exhaustion consumes her mind. The sleep problem and initial hallucinations. In the first 30 minutes of the film, we are introduced to Alice's daily life and how her insomnia affects her personally and professionally. She works as an investigative journalist for a major magazine, facing tight deadlines and the pressure to produce impactful stories. Alice is tasked with investigating a homicide case, but the constant sleep deprivation is starting to hinder her performance. Her hallucinations are becoming more frequent, and she starts to lose track of time, confusing past events with present ones. Hallucinations are a central part of the psychological horror in the film, and they are introduced gradually as small glimpses that question Alice's reality. At first, the hallucinations are relatively subtle. Objects move out of place, shadows seem to shift, and she hears sounds at night, like footsteps or whispers. However, as time passes, these visions grow increasingly intense and frightening. In one of the most memorable scenes, Alice sees a dark figure standing by her bed as she tries to rest for a few minutes. The figure doesn't move, but its mere presence creates an overwhelming sense of dread. When Alice blinks, the figure vanishes, but the feeling that something is very wrong lingers. Meanwhile, the pressure at her job mounts. Alice begins having trouble meeting her deadlines and focusing on her investigations. Her boss, a harsh and demanding man, starts questioning her competence, which only worsens her anxiety. Alice's frustration grows as she tries unsuccessfully to sleep. She experiments with different remedies, sleeping pills, chamomile tea, meditation, and even breathing techniques, but nothing seems to bring her any relief. The nights are endless, and the days begin to blur together in a haze of fatigue and confusion. Investigating the case and the emergence of the evil. The investigation Alice is conducting revolves around a series of mysterious deaths that have occurred in recent years, all somehow linked to insomnia. The victims were people who, like her, suffered from extreme sleep deprivation. What makes the case particularly frightening is that all the victims died shortly after finally being able to sleep. This creates a paradox. The one thing they desired most, sleep, ended up being the cause of their death. As Alice delves deeper into her research, she discovers a pattern in the deaths. All the victims reported seeing a dark figure in their dreams before they died. This begins to resonate with Alice's own experiences, as she's being tormented by a sinister presence in her hallucinations. She finds old articles that speak of an evil spirit that hunts those who are afraid to sleep. According to legend, the evil is an entity that feeds on people's vulnerability while they sleep. The fear they feel strengthens it, and the longer they go without sleep, the stronger it becomes. This is the cycle that Alice starts to believe she's trapped in. She finds records of previous victims and learns that they all reported similar experiences. A figure in the corners of the room, strange noises at night, and finally, the dark figure manifesting in their dreams. The fear of sleep begins to consume Alice from the inside out. She starts to see the dark figure even during the day, in mirrors, in the shadows of the streets, as if she's being followed. Her fear grows so much that she does everything she can to avoid sleep, including consuming absurd amounts of coffee and stimulants. Alice's mental and physical breakdown. The film then takes on an increasingly surreal tone. The audience is dragged into Alice's disturbed mind, where the line between real and imagined completely dissolves. Sleep deprivation leads her into a mental state of confusion and paranoia. The director uses cinematic techniques to intensify this experience, such as tilted camera angles, rapid cuts, and a soundtrack filled with buzzing and nearly inaudible noises, simulating the constant noise that invades the mind of someone deprived of sleep. There is a particularly terrifying sequence where Alice begins wandering the city on a rainy night. She is exhausted and afraid to return home, as the evil presence seems stronger in her apartment. Alice sees distorted and shadowy figures in the streets, and the camera follows her erratic, confused movements. When she finally returns home, she realizes she left the door unlocked. Upon entering, she finds objects out of place and lights flickering, suggesting that the dark figure might have been there. Meanwhile, Alice continues trying to figure out a way to defeat the spirit. She visits a sleep disorder specialist, Dr. Emily Morgan, who seems to be the only one who believes her. Dr. Morgan explains that there are studies about how extreme insomnia can open portals between the world of dreams and reality. She mentions an ancient myth that describes the existence of a spirit known as the Dream Devourer, which feeds on people in the deepest stages of sleep. Dr. Morgan warns Alice that if she doesn't confront her fear and find a way to sleep peacefully, the spirit will destroy her, just as it did with the other victims. The final confrontation with the spirit and the curse cycle. In the third act of the film, Alice reaches her breaking point. She decides that the only way to defeat the spirit is to confront it directly in her dreams. To do so, she prepares for a final battle in the dream world. Alice sets up her apartment for the confrontation, covering mirrors, turning off lights, and locking doors, hoping this will keep the spirit at bay. She takes a strong sleeping pill, something she has avoided until this point, fearing what might happen if she falls asleep. As soon as Alice drifts into sleep, the film dives into completely surreal territory. The transition into the dream world is done smoothly and hypnotically. Alice's apartment transforms into an endless maze of dark hallways and doors leading to impossible places. The dark figure that has been tormenting her is now clearer, revealing itself as a distorted and monstrous presence. The chase that follows is breathtaking. Alice runs through the endless hallways while the spirit follows, always lurking, always one step behind. The chase scenes are intense and claustrophobic, with the soundtrack reaching a crescendo of deafening noise. However, Alice realizes she cannot keep running. She finally confronts the entity. In an emotionally charged confrontation, the spirit reveals its true nature. It is a manifestation of Alice's unresolved traumas, the guilt she carries for her parents' death, and the fear of facing her own pain. Alice then understands that the only way to defeat the spirit is to accept her loss and stop running from her feelings. With that, Alice wakes up, exhausted, but relieved. The spirit seems to have vanished, and the morning light finally pours into her apartment. However, the film ends ambiguously, suggesting that the cycle may not be completely over. The final scene shows Alice looking at her reflection in a mirror, and for a brief moment, the shadow of the spirit is still there, watching her from afar. This complete recap delves into the psychological and supernatural aspects of sleep, O Mal Nunca Dorme, focusing on Alice's struggle with her inner demons and the spirit that haunts her, creating a narrative that is both terrifying and emotionally resonant. And that's a wrap on today's recap. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a minute of the latest movies and series. Got thoughts on this film, or want a recap of something else? Drop your suggestions in the comments. We love hearing from you. Thanks for watching Minute Recaps, where we save you time, 1 minute at a time.